Hi guys, welcome back to Red Dead Redemption 2. As promised, this is going to be probably a very unchaotic video, but ever since I started making videos again, I've been wanting to make some kind of sort of vlog video talking about everything that happened since, what was it, late 2017, which is when I stopped making videos kind of suddenly. And I figured at least some of you might want to know what happened, why I stopped posting videos, and what made me restart a few months ago. So I should say off the bat that I was never known as a good storyteller. So this will probably be very chaotic and with cars in the background. I did make some bullet points on paper just to make sure that I didn't miss anything significant. But at the same time, I don't want to read it off. So this kind of feels like a school presentation, but different. And as far as gameplay goes, we'll just be walking around the map a bit. I can't say how long this video will turn out to be. It's probably pretty long. But yeah, might as well just get into it. Oh, and before I forget, I'd like to wish you all the best for the new year, as this will be the first video that I publish in 2023. So yeah, I hope you all had great holidays and are able to finish 2022 in a positive way. But yeah, so in 2017, I had been looking for work for quite some time. I finished my studies at the music school in June 2016. And ever since that summer, I think in that summer of 2016 is when I started this channel. Mostly because I just had to do something with my time besides looking for work. It's very windy outside, so I don't know if that's going to be a problem, but hopefully not. So yeah. Okay. My apologies, there was a problem with some wolves that I had to deal with. Okay, more wolves to deal with. I do plan to go to a less foresty area where hopefully wolves will be less of a problem. Anyway, so in the summer of 2016, I started looking for work and I officially entered the job market, thinking that that it would be fairly easy process. You just apply for a job, maybe a few, and then you have some interviews, and then they hire you, because that's typically how it goes. And I really didn't think it would be that big of a problem. So that's when I, encountered the problem that I really didn't have many qualifications. And, I had some competence in general, but like no real specific studies, even though I did have a bachelor degree in linguistics. But from what I remember, it was like the typical problem of A, not having enough experience in other jobs, obviously, and 2, I didn't have the specific skills required for some of the jobs that I was applying for. So yeah, that went on for way too long. Like, jump to, I want to say February, maybe March of 2017, which is when I did find my first proper job, even though it was as an intern. At the water distribution company in the city where I lived. And it was just a very general admin kind of job, or at least that's technically I was hired to do to review manuals for a database software that they were implementing. So, I forget how much I had to make it myself and how much was just review stuff. But I did have some part in writing that manual, so writing out the steps of how to use it, learning how to use it, of course. Adding screenshots, whatever, all that stuff. But that job was where I first kind of felt that something was a bit off, seriously, about me in general. And I did keep working there for 3 months, but then I quit, kind of. I don't know if cold turkey is the right expression here, but one day I just told the HR person that I wanted to quit, and the next day, or at the latest a few days after, I actually stopped. So that's the end of that, even though my girlfriend at the time rightly suggested that I stuck with it until I had another job, so I wouldn't be unemployed again. But I was in so much of a anxious and panicky state at the time that I kind of blew that suggestion in the wind, and I did stop. So then, yeah, unemployed again. And we're talking now like May 2017. Again, looking for work, applying for jobs, and even, and this is pretty embarrassing to say, but I had an interview at some, I think it was some kind of marketing company. I remember the guy, the boss was Australian, but he was based in my city. And I applied there, had an interview, and like probably the next day or so, I got a call from him that he didn't have like a. I told you I'm not a good storyteller. He didn't have a spot in the function that I applied for, but he could offer me a job as more like a back-end kind of worker, like not actively going out and talking to people and trying to sell whatever it was they were selling. But yeah, more of a back-end stuff. And while the phone call was going on, it only lasted a few minutes, but while he was saying that he could offer me a job, that's when I decided in my head, again, kind of an anxiety-based panic reaction, that I wasn't going to take it anyway. So, yeah, it was kind of a weird phone call, and I honestly can't say how he took it, because I bet it must have seemed weird to him that he called to tell me basically good news, and then I refused anyway. And the explanation I gave him was that I wanted to focus on music and trying to make that work as a job, technically. I knew it would have been difficult, but music was the one thing I loved to do, and I felt that I was really good at, so it made sense to at least try to make that work. Even though in my own mind I knew it was a very long shot, because I never had a really good relationship with performing, and in my mind, in order to be somewhat successful in music, you have to perform a lot, which was a very difficult thing for me to do. So, long story short, it was just an excuse to to not have to take that job, because it was like avoidance behavior. Oops. Sorry, mister. So, yeah. I told you that in that first 3-month job, I noticed something was a bit off about me, and like something deeper than just like, it's tricky to explain, but like something more overarching than just normal character traits. So I looked up like the classic symptoms of autism. And I thought, like I sort of self-diagnosed that I might have it. I mean, that many of the signs fit. But like I would never claim that I had autism without having a proper diagnosis. So I forget if it was while I was still working that job or shortly after, but around that time I started going to a psychiatrist. The same psychiatrist that my best friend went to. And after the first few sessions, she strongly advised that I got myself tested for autism. By the way, I realized that all this is kind of old stuff that I think I have talked about in those older videos, but I thought I should start at the beginning. So with the advice and recommendation of my psychiatrist, I contacted like a diagnostic center where they test and diagnose developmental disorders. But as it turned out, there was a very long waiting list. Because now I think we're talking August 2017 is when I actually called to put myself on that list. And it wouldn't be until December 2018 until I actually got tested. So, yeah. At the time, they couldn't say how long it would take, but I'm pretty sure they said that it would be at least a year or something like that. So, yeah, that was, I guess, a half step in the right direction, but I was still unemployed, still living together with my girlfriend at the time. And yeah, it was a pretty big struggle. I think at the time I didn't want to see how bad it actually was and how much stress I was causing my ex. Because she did have a job and I did have money from savings, like I guess what you would kind of call a college fund, but money that my parents and mainly my dad had saved over the years since I was born, pretty much. So I was paying my share of everything from that. And probably less than my share, which is, again, really not something I'm proud of. But that was the situation. So we moved house around that time. And in that new city where we ended up moving to. kept looking for work and kept not finding work, and like doing all the wrong avoiding behavior. I remember one job specifically was at a library. Or I applied twice at a library because I thought at least the environment would be more suited to me than most jobs. But both times there was like a written test with, I can't remember all the questions, but like in one case there was like questions about how you would deal with customers, or there were questions about literature and customer service and all that stuff, which I really wasn't prepared for because I didn't know anything about that. Like I did study linguistics, and I do know something about some literature, but I really wasn't following literature, like current literature, in any way, so most of the questions went straight over my head. And then for the other library job, it was basically the same deal. Like a lot of questions about recent popular works at the time, and like some Belgian writer's debut, what it was called, or questions about literary awards and stuff. Like I really didn't know anything about this. It's possible I handed in my exam first of everyone in the room, although maybe that's just something I'm making up, but I certainly didn't leave that place with a positive feeling. Just checking how long I've been going. So, short time jump to October. I'm pretty sure it was Friday the 13th of October, but again, maybe it's just something I'm making up. But that's when my ex broke up with me. After, I'm not sure. Yeah, it must have been 7.5 years. So that was a very big deal at the time. Like, because of our situation, it made the most sense that I moved out. Because I wouldn't have been able to afford that place or any place by myself, so yeah, long story short, I moved back to my dad's, where I quickly found out that it was really not great for me to be there, like, just because of personal stuff. So I think after about 2 weeks I moved to my mom's, where mentally I felt better, which isn't saying much because I wasn't feeling good, obviously. So, yeah, that's where I lived for the next 8 months. Still looking for work, applying for all kinds of jobs, mostly very much below my competence level. There were a bunch of cleaning jobs that I applied for, to go clean at people's homes and at hospitals or companies, And naturally, a few times I was asked, like, why am I applying for this kind of job when I have a bachelor's degree? Which, honestly, I still can't answer. Or can't answer for sure, anyway. I guess a large part of it was like fear of failure. Because I thought I wouldn't be able to do any kind of quote unquote a serious job, or like a job with a lot of responsibilities, and also the anxiety about social interactions, like having to do meetings or calls or whatever, answering phones, all of that stuff really scared me at the time, and still does to some extent, but not nearly as much. So, yeah, I lived at my mom's from, I think, late November 2017 till June 2018. Sleeping on the couch, by the way. Not the worst couch, like kind of a, what's the word? Like retractable couch that you can make into a bigger surface to sleep on, but nothing close to like a proper mattress or anything. But it was comfortable enough. So, yeah, I don't think I missed anything big. Oh, wait, there was one thing, like, not long before we broke up, I was working as a music teacher at this independent music school, mainly for children. And I kind of randomly replied there that if they were looking for a bass teacher, that I was available. And they ended up going for it. Like, they weren't really planning to, but from what I remember, they had vague plans to expand to more instruments. So they hired me. It wasn't like it wasn't a super legit kind of job legally, but it was something. And also at that time I was advertising more to do private lessons at home, to which I had one response. I think I had been like putting myself out there as a teacher a few times before, but I always stopped kind of quickly because it was, again, like a lot of the social stuff that I'm not great at, to say the least. But there was one lady who did come like 2 or 3 times for lessons. But both of those, like the private lessons and the music school thing, had to end when I moved in with my parents, because it was just too much of a hassle. Like I think I went for one more lesson, but that involved taking the train for like 2 hours and a half, and then a 15 or 20-minute walk. So I was on the road for 6 hours, maybe more, for 3 times 30 minutes of teaching. So, and was really not viable anymore. And I broke that off, like, as politely as I could, just explaining that it just wasn't doable. I think that's the end of that. So now we're in March 2018, when I met my next girlfriend. And yeah, as you know, in December of 2017, before I forget to mention it, is when I uploaded my last video at that time. Because I really wasn't in a good headspace to make videos, and also practically it wasn't a very good, I didn't have a good space to record, because I was sharing my mom's office. So yeah, again to March 2018. Met someone new from my hometown, which is like, I want to say 40 minutes away or so by train from my mom's place. Quickly checking to see if I'm still recording on the PC. Yeah, we met, went on a few dates, and like that turned into a thing. And like, I keep wanting to be too specific about time when it's really not that important. And also I don't know what I'm doing here in the middle of this forest. So yeah, around that same time I found a job. No, it wasn't at the same time. I'm sorry. So from March till June-ish, we were still dating quite frequently. And in May or June, I think, I found a job as a what's the word? Like, I really can't think of the word. Like phone support for some kind of tax business. Okay. It's not the best explanation. Essentially answering phone calls of people who have questions about taxes on buildings. That was basically the gist. And that was further away from my mom's still, but closer to my hometown, where I was planning to move all along, because I really wanted to move back there. I lived in Antwerp for 8 years, but I wanted to move back to Leuven. Ever since I was single again, because it was still the place where I felt most at home. So my new girlfriend lived in Leuven, my hometown, and I found that job not far from my hometown, like I think 20 minutes or so by train. So it kind of made sense that we moved in together. She was moving out from her current apartment. I was looking for a place in that town, so we just looked for something together. And in June, I think, we moved in there. Which was, I guess, kind of a blessing, because when we applied for that apartment, only she had a job. I didn't yet. But I, as I said a few times, I did end up finding work. So that was, I thought, kind of a relief at the time. But as I quickly discovered, that job was really torture for me, mentally. Because it's a tricky subject matter to begin with. I really don't like talking on the phone, and I especially don't like having to make phone calls with people who I don't know. So that was, in hindsight, a very stupid decision to even think I would be able to do that. It was very stressful. There was a very strict schedule of like how long you could have lunch break or bathroom breaks or any of that stuff. So yeah, that lasted for 3 weeks. Again, having to do kind of a shameful exit from a job, as they hired me and I really was embarrassed to quit so soon, and to realize that I really wasn't able to do something which I thought I would have been able to do. Which you could see as self-discovery or whatever, but at the time it really sucked. I think I will go to sleep real quick. Okay, it's morning again, so we can resume our little trek. And I realized I forgot to mention something, because there was, while I was living with my mom, I was looking for bands to play in professionally. And I wound up getting a call from a guy who was in The Voice. I don't think he was the winner, but he was like at least one of the finalists. And he was looking for a band, and I don't know how he even found me. I think it was on some ad, like a small ads site, like Craigslist, but the Belgian version. So, yeah, I ended up meeting him, having 1 or 2 rehearsals, until once again things got too real for me too quickly, and I fled, basically. Like, I explained to him that I wanted to do something else, and that I was moving soon, which I was, but that really wasn't a reason to stop. So, yeah, not sure how he felt about that. I guess he felt a bit cheated, maybe, or frustrated with me. But at the time, I really didn't care enough to not quit. So anyway, after that call center job, okay, still alive. I was living in my hometown, or very close to my hometown. Once again, unemployed, looking for work. So that was from like June, July 2018. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for news about the autism diagnostic tests. Hoping that, that they would be able to, or that I would be able to take those tests soon, and that they would confirm that I had autism. Because my psychiatrist, who I was still going to quite regularly, she said a few times that she would be very surprised if they didn't diagnose me. So yeah, there was still an ongoing thing, like waiting for a call or news of any sort. I was still living from my savings mostly, even though I had earned some money. It really didn't last very long. And one day I randomly decided to start writing a book. Or 2 books, actually, because the first one was going to be fiction. some kind of horror thing. Now that I think about it, maybe that was all spawned by a high school teacher for whom we had to write a short story in group. So like, let's say three chapters, each of them written by someone else. And I remember that teacher saying, or being very impressed with what I had written, which was some kind of horror thing. Although I really can't remember what it was about at all. But yeah, I think that was something I always wanted to do, like write a book. So I thought, why not now? But it turned out that writing fiction is very difficult for me because you have to. The whole universe that you create has to make sense, so you have to first of all choose character names, which was difficult. And it just proved very difficult very quickly for me to keep any kind of coherence. Which of course is not written in stone that you have to do it like this. It's just I wasn't able to write how I wanted to write. So I gave that up pretty quickly, and then I started to write a non-fictional thing in the vein of like train of thought kind of thing, where I just write whatever comes to mind, and it usually ended up being about me personally and kind of like a very elaborate diary, if you will. And that I did finish over the course of the next year and a half, maybe longer. I should still have it saved somewhere. Like, I think around 150 pages in Microsoft Word. So who knows what that would translate to as an actual book. But I never did anything with it. Like, I had been meaning to go through it again and review it, cut out any parts that I felt had to be cut out and stuff, which very much defeated the spirit in which I had started writing it anyway, like being very raw and unprocessed. So yeah, this was in the summer of 2018. Also around that time is when I started to take anti-anxiety medication. Which didn't take right away. Like I reacted pretty badly to the first two brands. And then I guess the third one proved to work better. There weren't many, or there weren't any bad side effects. Okay, slight geographical jump because there were more wolves to deal with. Okay, having dealt with the wolves and having started a second recording because I was having to go overtime. I guess now we're like in November 2018. I don't remember much that happened between the summer of 2018 and November. I'm sorry, Mr. Blind Person. So in November, I found a job at a grocery store, Lidl, if you care to know which one, where they were hiring under the policy of hiring pretty much anyone that applied and giving them 2 weeks or a month of trial periods, and if they were happy, you could stay. So, yeah, that's where I ended up working for the next 6 months, actually. Because of course, it was very stressful as someone with undiagnosed autism. Which I shouldn't say that, like, not everyone with autism would do badly in a grocery store job. But for me, it was a pretty big risk to try that kind of job. But as it turns out, it ended up working out quite well. Of course, it wasn't my dream job, but I was reasonably happy there. The money was pretty good for how much I actually had to work, which was half-time. I want to say like 24 hours a week, which always ended up being more because they were kind of short-handed, if that's the word, understaffed. So yeah, I remember I had to spend one night at my mom's because there was some kind of instructional session, whatnot, at one of the distribution centers where some higher positioned person explained about the company and the history and some general numbers, followed by a tour of the distribution center, which was pretty interesting to see what a beehive, a place like that, really is. If that analogy makes any sense at all, which it probably doesn't. But yeah, that place was pretty far away and closer to my mom's, so since I didn't drive, and still don't actually, I spent one night at my mom's and she drove me there in the morning and picked me up afterwards, because the public transportation in that area was pretty much non-existent. So yeah, that was the start of that. I forgot to mention something kind of important. I forget when I got the call about the diagnostic tests, but the tests would be somewhere in, must be late November. Because I remember having to tell my new boss that I would have had to start a week later, because there were the tests, which wasn't a problem for her, so no real issue there, just kind of unfortunate timing. So yeah, in November and December there were 2 days where I had to go to pretty close to Antwerp. There's that diagnostics center is there. Both times just with my mom, as well, my dad didn't really want to be there, so that was that. So yeah, 2 days of tests, or not 2 full days actually, just more like 2 half days of all kinds of tests, like memory tests, repeating number sequences, spatial, what's the word? Spatial puzzle tests. Describing photos and images, watching videos with... I wish I could remember what the video was about. It was like a bunch of short clips that made up a story, and after each clip I had to explain what I saw and try to describe how the people in those videos felt and whatnot. Yeah, just all sorts of tests. Fine motor function stuff. Like I remember I was given some screws and washers and bolts, and I had to take a screw and then put a washer on it, then a nut, and then another washer or something like that, like a specific order of things. And the test was to try to see how many I could make, like just to, I guess, to test fine motor skills and how good I was at repetitive tasks, how they affected me. But yeah, long story short, I keep forgetting if it was late December or early January, but I think early January that I got the results, being that indeed I was on the spectrum. I had to go there again for a evaluation kind of talk, once again with my mom and with one of the psychologists who had taken the tests. And yeah, I won't bore you with this too much, but it was just an explanation of how the autism spectrum works and like some misconceptions and stuff like that. And like, my IQ scores and all that stuff, which, as it turns out, I have a high verbal IQ, but a low, like, what's the word? Working memory IQ? I don't know. I think, in essence, that means that I have a bad short-term memory, but I'm better than average at languages, so those two combined means that I have an average IQ, which is pretty average. There was, once again, a terrible explanation of something simple, but yeah. So, yeah, that psychologist mentioned a company called Passwork, I guess, literally translated. Which is specialized in working with people with autism and employing them as software testers, which of course interested me very much right away. But, and this is again the unfortunate timing, I had just started at Lidl, so yeah, I felt kind of stuck there, even though I did want to explore working at Passwork. So I did apply there. I forget exactly how, but I'm sure it was just some pretty standard application form through their website. And then sometime later, like a month or so later, I was invited for a first interview, which wasn't really an interview as such, but more of a talk about, you know, so they could get a first impression of me in person. So that went well, but I didn't, like, there wasn't much news shortly after. I was still working at the store, which was, you know, not the best environment to be in, but, oops, snake. But it was pretty good money. I had some financial security for the time being. And actually time went by pretty quickly while I was working, because it was most of the time, the early shift was from 7 till probably till 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And the late shift was, I guess 2 to 8 or 7:30, whatever it was, I forget. And yeah, like, as you can expect, early shifts were pretty brutal. Because that's when all the meat and all the vegetables have to be taken out from like the big fridges on wheels. It's just very physically intense work, which to an extent I kind of enjoyed because it means I wasn't thinking too much. But I did always struggle to keep up, and on a few occasions, like my supervisors or whatever were a bit harsh on me, some more than others. Like there was one guy who I really loved to be a rude word. And it seemed like pretty power hungry and just, always look for the little mistakes just to be able to tell someone off. Anyway. All in all, that grocery store wasn't that bad. Like half the people were cool. Some were kind of meh. And some were pretty awful. But I guess it's like that in any job. Just a very toxic kind of environment and some drama some days. Like there was one guy who on a few occasions while I was working there like got into heated arguments with customers about nothing special or like nothing major. From what I remember, a lot of arguments among colleagues. So yeah, just not the most pleasant environment, but the work was okay most of the time. So this was then till May of 2019. And this is where my memory fails me a bit because I can't remember quite how the timing worked out. But I do remember it was kind of close because I have to pause and think for a minute. Yeah, so in May, my temporary contract at Lidl would expire. But my boss told me that she would offer me a fixed contract after that, so I could stay there indefinitely, pretty much. And the tricky part was that by that time, by the end of my contract, I still had no definitive news from Buswerk, the software test company. So I had to basically decide if I wanted to take the fixed contract at Lidl or take a risk and have the temporary contract expire while not being sure that I would have a job at Postwerk. I think it was a bit more complicated than that, but that was the general idea or the general situation. But luckily this time there was fortunate timing. It might even have been the day before my contract expired or a few days at the most, but I did get positive news from Postwerk to say that that they would have me take the assessment training period, whatever. Which was still no guarantee that they would actually hire me, but that was the best news I could hope for. So I very clearly remembered the day, my last day at Lidl. I remember, but it's tricky to explain. Just like the final time checking out and walking through those doors. Not 100% happy. Like, of course, I was kind of relieved to not have to work there. But there was some melancholy, I guess. Because I did also have fun times there, although they're not really the majority. So yeah, that was May 2019. Small downside was that from then till I want to say October, I wasn't allowed to do or to have other jobs because of some legal job law reasons. I'm gonna have to sleep again. But yeah, so in a way I was kind of relieved that I wouldn't have to work, of course, or I wouldn't have to go through the struggle of finding something short term to bridge that gap. But yeah, like again, it was 6 months or so of unemployment. I will quickly sleep. Okay, not the best weather apparently. And I quickly have to check check the PC to make sure it doesn't go to standby. And this is definitely going to be a hugely long video. Maybe in 2 parts even. But I'd prefer to do it in 1 part. So yeah, as I was saying, I wasn't allowed legally to have other jobs before I started the assessment at Paswerk. So, yeah, I just had to keep busy, I suppose. I forget exactly what I spent my time with. But, yeah, in October, my girlfriend at the time and I broke up. Which was not totally out of the blue, I suppose, like the previous one. But just, it was more of an easier breakup for me, for sure. We were just two different people, I think. But as the situation kind of called for, we ended up living together still for 3 months afterwards. With me sleeping on the couch once again, which was fine. Like, it may sound sadder than it really was. It was just the way it had to be. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but it was just, you know, that was the situation. So in October, also probably more mid to late October, I started the assessment at Passwork, which, like the diagnostic tests, was a bunch of tasks and assignments we had to complete over the course of 2 weeks. Again, all kinds of stuff. Some logic assignments, writing about stuff. I wish I could remember more. Sorting objects, doing a presentation, even one where we had to cook in small groups, which I guess was like meant to show off how we worked as a team, or like how well we individually worked in a team. And yeah, just all kinds of stuff, really. But that was 2 weeks. I'm not sure if the results came out directly after, or if there was a week or two in between. But in any case, they decided to hire me, which was definitely the best news I'd had in the few years prior. And I suppose it was not far from Christmas, so it was also a very nice Christmas gift. But yeah, so now it was more like a matter of waiting until they found a project for me where I could actually start working, because I forgot to explain this a bit more clearly, but they don't. It's really easy to explain, but I'm failing once again to explain something. The thing is that I work for Passwerk, but they place you at suitable client companies for projects of varying duration, depending on what that client needs and how long you're willing to do it. Like, that's basically the system. And not exactly sure when I got the news, but I think like late December. I already got news from my newly assigned job coach that they had found a project for me and that I was able to start if everything worked out in mid-January of 2020. Which was a project at the Flemish government, which is one of the 3 governments in Belgium, as far as I'm aware. It's a bit complicated, and I don't really care that much. But it was in Brussels, which kind of worked out because I was still living in or close to my hometown of Leuven. And I'm not sure how the timing works out for this again, because I was still living with my ex. So I think for a week or 2, or maybe less, I went to Brussels from there, like from where we still lived. But of course I was looking for a new place to live, which I found through co-housing. That was really the only viable, or in my mind, that was the only viable option. Because I wanted to stay in that area, which is relatively expensive to live there, or to rent there. So I probably wouldn't have been able to afford an apartment by myself unless it was like a real shabby place. So I decided that co-housing would be the best option. And yeah, I found a nice place to live with 4 other people who already lived there, of course. But some people were moving out from the house, so they had a room available, which I was able to take. And I guess that was from, like, not sure if it was early February or early March, but somewhere around that time. There was 1 week I had to bridge at my dad's, who also lives in that area, because there was 1 week where I had to move out at the current apartment, but I wasn't able to move into the co-housing place yet, but that was 1 week, so really not that bad. And the prospects of having a nicer place to live it certainly helped a lot. And yeah, as soon as I started at that new job at the government, I kind of knew that I had landed in a good place. Because the thing with buswerk is also that you have your job coach from buswerk itself, but then at the project where you end up working, you also get assigned a SPOC, or a single point of contact, person of contact. So basically one person who assists you in the actual workplace. Yeah, and she's just really been great. I can't say enough good things about her. She has a daughter with autism and another one with, I think, ADHD. And she is recently also diagnosed with ADHD, and her husband is also on the spectrum, so she has a lot of first-hand experience. Even though every case is different, of course, there is usually some overlap, and being able to recognize and help with certain issues that neurotypical people don't usually have. So yeah, that's really I fell with some body part in the honey, as they say, or in the butter, I don't know. Not making sense again. So yeah, just especially coming from that grocery store job to having to, or being able to work in a nice office job where really everyone is nice and there's no real tensions or squabbles, or just, I'm trying to put it as politely as possible, but no immature behavior, at least that I ever came into contact with. Maybe there is and I just don't know, but in general it's just a very mature place to work. I can't really describe it any other way. And this is really the start of, I want to say, the best period in my life after my childhood. Although, no, I can't say the best period since my childhood, because there was the music studies, which were also really great, but definitely since I started looking for work in 2016. I finally felt like I arrived somewhere where I wanted to stay, which of course was a huge deal. And really since then, things haven't really gone bad again. Looking at my notes to see if I missed anything, but yeah, so as you all know, in March of 2020, COVID properly broke out, which soon meant that I had to work from home. Luckily, that was an option. Like, I know for some jobs, you can't do them from home, so I was very lucky in that respect, that I could just keep working from my bedroom, basically. Yeah, so trying not to jump ahead too much, but from March till like September, things just kind of went its course. Working at the government, living in the co-housing place. Also dating quite a bit, mostly through Tinder and maybe other apps. I don't know if I was on Tinder and OkCupid and Bumble, but I don't think I actually went on a date with anyone I matched with on Bumble. So, yeah, I'll gloss over that one. But there were a number of dates, mostly single dates. Some instances, like there were 2 or 3. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about this, but essentially I was really trying to put myself out there more, because I know I've always been a very sheltered kind of person. And I never really had much of a dating life. But that just felt like a good time to start getting out there more and meeting people. Because a big part also was that for the first time in a pretty long time, I wasn't really ashamed about anything anymore. Like, being unemployed is not something you can ever be proud of, really. Like, not being able to get a job, not being able to keep a job, not having an income means you can't really do much in your free time, like not much to spend money on. And of course, not everything you do in your free time has to cost money necessarily, but I hope you get the idea. So yeah, kind of a big jump from March to September, the 3rd of September to be specific. which is when I met my fiance. My birthday is on the 4th of September, so it was the best early birthday presents I ever had. Yeah, we met on OkCupid, if you are curious about the specific app we met on. She's Polish. I don't know if I ever mentioned that before, but she is actually Polish-German, but born in Poland. I'm trying to cross this bridge safely. Yeah, so we met, but we weren't able to actually meet till a month later. Well, this was interesting. These people in this game. So yeah, I don't know if I would have cut this part out, but I got attacked because I accidentally annoyed a few people and it ended up almost killing Sammy. So yeah, to get back to the story. We weren't able to meet until a month later. So, on my suggestion, we had makeshift dates in Stardew Valley. She wasn't and still isn't really like a real gamer, but she does enjoy some games, and I thought Stardew Valley would be a good way to be able to play something together that's not too competitive and just hang out. So we did that for a month-ish until we were actually able to go on a date in the place where she lived. And just things went very well, very quickly. Kept dating. I went over to her place. She came over to my or our place. And then we moved in together in December, I guess. Because there was a situation at my place with a new resident. One of the guys had moved out and another guy had moved in his place. But he was really a difficult case, to put it kind of gently. Like, he was a nice guy, but just kind of a rough background and very different views on basic cleanliness and stuff, and just he caused a lot of frustration with everyone else in the house. So yeah, I was staying at Anna's place whenever I could. I forget if it was ever more than a few days at a time, but one of the other guys in the house and his girlfriend, they were both living there. They decided to move out and find their own place. And shortly afterwards, I also announced that I was moving out to move in with Anna. Thinking if that's actually how it went. But yeah, that's what it boiled down to essentially. Everyone else was moving out because of that one guy. Or not just because, but he was a big factor in why we all moved out. There was some kind of aftermath with the new guy, like having people stay over in our former rooms even though we were still paying for them and stuff. Just pretty... I mean, I felt pretty bad for the landlord because he had to deal with him more than we did. There was some physical damage to the house as well, and just bad stuff. And I'm gonna have to end this recording again. So yeah, that was not the best way to end that chapter. On the bright side, Anna and I were now living together in her apartment, where we lived for, or where I guess, lived for 6 months till June of last year, which, well, 2021 to be clear. But yeah, just things went really great. Like we really fit well together. She's a much more decisive person than I am, but I balance out some of her, personality, so we keep each other in a good place, is what I'm trying to say. I went to Poland for the first time in May 2021 to meet her parents. Which was very positive right away. Her parents are very accepting of me as soon as I arrived, and probably even before I even met them, based on what Anna told me. Her sister as well is very... I mean, she's a great person, and just... They all felt like family almost instantly. So yeah, that was May, and then actually in that 1 year we went to Poland 3 times, once in May to meet her parents, and because I had an appointment for a tattoo. But because of, I think, yeah, the tattoo artist had an accident and burned her hand, so she wasn't able to work. So the options were to just make it a... Oh no, wait, I'm confusing things. In May, the appointment couldn't happen because she had the accident. So it was rescheduled for August. There was the option to to get something else done in May, but it would have been much smaller and not really what I wanted, so the best option was to reschedule for August, or maybe late July, I forget. I'd like to have a whole upper arm piece. So, yeah, second time in Poland was in July or August. And then the third time was in November for the second half of the tattoo. And actually I'm mistaken, because there were 4 times. In November we went for my tattoo to finish it. And a few weeks later we went again for Christmas. So yeah, it's a lot of driving, really. 'Cause it's like, if you're lucky, like 10 or 11 hours, but usually 12 to 13 hours. Which Anna always had to do, because I still don't drive. More on that later. So yeah, she has to drive every time we go, which is definitely taxing, obviously. And lately, the...
There you are, Arthur.
Hello, Bill.
Dutch has been worried about you. Sent me out looking.
I've been busy.
All right. At least you're alive. I'm gonna head back to camp now. You wanna come back with me?
Nah, I'll come back in a bit.
Suit yourself.
Alright, so... before I got interrupted by Bill Williamson, I was saying that each time we go to Poland is a bit more difficult than the last one. Just because it's very taxing, and usually when we go it's not for very long. Like a week at the most. Or sometimes even a few days. So it's a long drive both ways, and when we're there there's usually some stuff we have to do, like for example, last time we went was only a few weeks ago, on the 15th of December till the Monday after, with a stop in Cologne for the Christmas market. But but I'm skipping over a big thing. So let me get back on track a bit. So officially, Anna and I are together from the 10th of October 2020. That's in part kind of an arbitrary date because it's easy to remember and there's no real like one specific day where we decided that we were going to be together or stuff. So yeah, in 2021 we went to Poland a few times. And on our relationship anniversary, I proposed to her very romantically on the spot where we went for our first Valentine together. Of course, she said yes. There was no real doubt because we had been talking about it, and like we quickly knew how happy we are together, and just that this could be a forever thing, you know. So yeah, that's pretty much 2021 in a nutshell. Went to Poland for Christmas to celebrate Christmas with her family. Still working from home. And actually since COVID started in March 2020, I know that's not when it actually started, but that's when I started working from home. From then until now, I have gone to the office less than 5 times. So, just to show that I always work from home and that I'm not obligated to go to the office with any specific frequency. So that brings us to this year, or the past year, I should say, where mostly it's been the same old. We went to Poland a few times. I've been planning the wedding, which will only be in October of this year, 2023. The 6th of October. I can't claim much credit for planning the wedding, but you know, that's mostly Anna's, what's the word? Merit, I suppose. Like, she does by far most of the planning. She will make all the invitations by hand. She made the save the dates by hand. We went to buy her dress pretty soon after the proposal. I forget when exactly, but so that's settled. We have the venue booked. Catering and stuff, not yet. Photographer is booked. It will be the same photographer that's made our engagement pictures. A Polish lady. Ironically, it's cheaper to fly someone over from Poland for a wedding shoot than it is to hire a good photographer from Belgium. Just to show. But yeah, she's really nice. I'll try to remember to link her in the description. She really deserves the exposure. And, well, less about me, but more about Anna, is that she started a side profession, if that's what it's called in English, as a photographer. I believe it was sometime in January that she actually officially started it. But that's going very well for her. It went pretty well very quickly. Because she's a great photographer. But obviously she can't make our wedding pictures. Yeah, she started out doing all kinds of shoots. We converted the second upstairs room in our house to a basic photo studio. But most of her shoots are away from home, and she really wants to specialize in wedding photography, which is what she loves doing the most, and as a bonus, that's the kind of shoot that pays the best. And actually now on the 31st of December, she is out on a shoot and she won't be back until past midnight. So I get to spend New Year's Eve by myself making this video and playing games and doing whatever. But it's good. I want to support her as much as I can, and I honestly don't mind being alone, even on New Year's Eve. I don't put much value to that occasion. I feel like if you it's like with Valentine's Day, if you make too big of a deal out of it, usually it just ends up a bit underwhelming. So yeah, this is totally fine. So yeah, that's going well for her. She has a lot of days already booked for wedding shoots this year, as well as in 2024 even. So I'm really glad that that's working out for her as well as it is. And then, yeah, kind of relevant, I suppose, is that I'm finally learning how to drive with Anna as my teacher. So there are rules about who can teach someone to drive. They have to, I think the rules are they have to have a license for 8 years or more, which she does because she got hers pretty much right away when she turned 18, I think. So yeah, that's going kind of well. I'm not practicing as much as I should. For one, because I still have some avoidance behavior. Because it's always been scary for me to drive, and I told myself I was never going to learn. Even though I did learn at some point. Like I had a few lessons with my mom back in 2010. But then because of stuff, I forget what exactly, my license expired after 3 years. And I told myself I would be fine without a license. Very delusional, I know. But now Anna's been very understanding from the beginning that she's fine with me not driving. She feels that not everyone should drive. Like there are some people who are just better off not driving for safety reasons mostly. But from the beginning she said that it was fine, and if I ever changed my mind, that would be great, but there was no pressure at all. So, yeah, the main reason why I changed my mind was because of the drives to Poland, and also like general safety, I suppose. If something happens to Anna, or anyone else for that matter, and I'm the only one who would be able to take her to the hospital, which 99% of the time I suppose I am, unless she's at work or something. You know, we would just both feel more at ease if I was able to drive, and that I could drive if it's really necessary. Like if she suddenly feels bad or is too tired to drive, or she shouldn't drive, but there's no alternative right now. So yeah, in August I got my theoretical thing. Learner's permit is what I meant. On the second attempt. The first attempt I was 1 point short. I believe the minimum is 44 out of 50. And I had 43, so that was kind of a bummer, but Took the test again a few weeks later. And I passed this time. I forget by how big of a margin, but I got my learner's permit, and we pretty quickly started practicing on there's like a small courtyard across the street that's big enough to drive circles in, but not much else, so just that was a good place to learn the very basics of just starting and stopping. And we had this routine where I had to park in every corner of the square, forwards or backwards. And since then we've been going to the streets only a few times. There is a pretty good loop of streets in our neighborhood that's not too busy and like not too intimidating, but still a good place to learn. And yeah, I mean, it's still scary, or it's still gives me anxiety to get into the car behind the wheel and like actually get going. But actually, once I am moving, like once I have gotten going, if that's even grammatically correct, it's really not that bad. Of course, I have a lot left to learn, but Anna is very encouraging, and she's a good teacher. Like, part of her job is to teach. So I'm glad that she is able and allowed to teach me. Because taking driving school lessons kind of gives me even more anxiety. Although I will take some official lessons just to learn tricks, and they should know more about driving than Anna does, so it can't hurt to take some lessons. But for now, we'll just keep practicing in the, just the two of us. And I guess that's it. Like, I honestly didn't plan to end up here, but this is the area where I took off from. So without a map, and I was never really paying much attention to where I was going. As fate would have it, we're in the same place where I started. I guess that's going to be it, really. It's taken long enough for sure. I don't know how much of this I will edit, or if I will leave it mostly raw. But now you're as much up to date as anyone I know, really. So also, as a bonus, now if I talk about, IRL stuff in other videos, at least hopefully it won't be completely out of the blue and like with zero context. Trying to think if there's anything else I left out. I don't think so. I would feel terrible if I forgot to mention the wedding and stuff, but that's pretty much impossible to forget. Yeah, the wedding will be 6th of October 2023. some of her family will come over from Poland and Germany and the US in one specific case. But all my family lives in Belgium, so it's made the most sense to have the wedding here. Although some of my relatives were like jokingly moaning that we should have planned it in Poland, so they would have an excuse to go there on holiday. But yeah, it's going to be here in ye old Belgium. And I'm sensing that I'm starting to ramble without making any sense, so I think this is a good place to end this video, or this movie, I guess you could say. Yeah, to conclude, thank you very much for watching as always and for listening. Thank you for the support I've been getting from old viewers and new ones. I really plan to keep doing this for as long as I can, trying to do at least one video per week. Incidentally, there is a new mic on the way, so this may very well be the last video I do with my current microphone. Yeah, I'm going around in circles in the game and in my talking. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great start to 2023, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.